Please welcome Chris Davidson.
The old hometown looks the same as I step down from the train, and there to meet me is my mama and papa. Down the road I look, and there runs Mary, hair gold and lips like cherries. It's beautiful to touch the green, green grass of home. Feedback's wonderful. Yes, they've all come to meet me. And so the question is, ladies and gentlemen, which year was it? 68, 67, 65. I've got a little bit of feedback. Is anyone else getting the feedback? 67, 68, 64, 63, 65. Anybody really want to shout one out and just make conviction? 66! The man gets it. 1966 it was. Absolutely right, Richard McCann. Now I must check with my visiting friends from the German Speakers Association. I think there was a football match in that year. I just need to check the detail on that. But there was one other exciting thing that happened in 1966, and that was it was my very, very first visit to this building with that man, Daddy Davidson. Daddy Davidson is a life member of this club, and we used to come down here as a family and use it as a base in London, if you like. And I've been a member under my own right for about 20 years now. And I mentioned this to Ailey Milnes, my good friend and PSA board member, some time ago. And she joined, and she mentioned it to Derek, the president, and he joined, and one thing led to another, and here we are. So when we go for lunch in half an hour's time, raise a toast to Daddy Davidson and his foresight in joining the Victory Services Club in 1949. Or 48 or something like that, before he even met the woman who would become his wife and my mother. What a fascinating little story. Let me introduce you to my professional life now. What do I do for a living? I save the world from mediocre presentations. I have a lot of business to do. So what is it that is involved in a presentation? We need to press the clicker and go ahead a slide. Thank you. What is it that is involved in presentations? I'm really fascinated by how people use a stage. I'm really fascinated in how they use their body language. I'm equally fascinated in... Did you like that? I'm equally fascinated in how they use graphics to support their message, and I'm equally fascinated in the use of props. And props and graphics are different things for me. Props have to be got on stage, they have to be got off stage, they have to be made, they have to be bought, different from graphics. I'm really interested in people's use of voice, how they write a script, and having written a script, I am really interested in how they actually voice the script. For me, voice is a verb and a noun. You voice a script. I would love to talk to you about all of this today, because if you put all of those 6 elements together in a comprehensive and cohesive way, you get what I call an integrated performance. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to talk about an integrated performance today, so I'm going to focus just on voice. And what is it that we can say about voice? Well, we can say this. I would be very happy to have that quote attributed to me. But it's not actually. It came from here, the very latest edition of Speaker Magazine. And isn't it apposite that the very latest edition of Speaker Magazine contains this quote, while we have a convention going on with me on stage and Nabil talking about voice. Perhaps, finally, voice is getting the hearing it deserves, the pun fully intended. So what is this voice thing? Well, this voice thing is a bit like this can of fuel. So the fuel in this can is to your car what the air in your lungs is to your voice. No fuel in can, no transport. No air in lungs, no voice. So if you want to know voice, first you have to know breathing. So let's get serious and look at breathing. What is breathing? There are 3 stages to breathing. There is an inspiration stage, there is an expiration stage, there is a recovery stage. 3 simple stages, and then you repeat the whole thing. You are all doing that unconsciously now. You don't have to think about it. You can leave it on autopilot for your entire lives. It's an amazing bodily function in that respect. You can just leave it alone and it'll do it for you. It started the moment you were born, and you know exactly when it's going to finish. There is another form of breathing, and I call that breathing to thrive. It's very different from breathing to survive. Sure, it has the same 3 functions in it. It's got an inspiration stage, it's got an expiration stage, it's got recovery, but now there's 2 more stages involved in this breathing to thrive thing. First, we got to think. There's a thinking stage that said, what am I doing with my brain just before I take in this massive load of air, because I'm going to do something with it. And before I breathe out, I'm going to set up some controls. I'm going to fiddle around with my laryngeal muscles, my pharyngeal muscles, so I produce exactly the sound that I want to produce. So there's a 5-stage process here that is different to a 3-stage process. So the conscious, assertive control of breathing, which is what you would do on stage, is very different from the 3-stage model, although in fact you can produce sound with both models. So if you can produce sound with both models, why does it matter? Good question. Well, it matters like this. It matters like this. If you print an invoice and you are using unconscious breathing control, your invoice will be this big. And if I was responsible for paying it, it would be this big. If you consciously control your voice, your invoice will be this big. I am not here to talk about arty-farty, right-brain stuff. Everything I do is hard and gritty and puts money in your bank account. So let's get with the plan. Let's look at the 5-stage breathing process in a little bit more detail, because it really is critical that you get to grips with this. Now, I said there were 3 stages there, the breathing in, the breathing out, the recovery. Well, yeah, but they're not the same. For a start, the breathing in stage is a lot shorter, even though, in fact, you're taking in more air with a shorter breath. The breathing out phase is a lot longer because you've got more air there in the first place. The recovery stage is different too, so in fact, the whole model is different. Look at it this way. We all have a license to drive one of these things down the road to the local supermarket, do our weekly shopping. Fine, no problem. The skills that we have to drive this vehicle on that trip, are those skills adequate and sufficient to drive this vehicle in these weather conditions in the Malaysian Grand Prix? Not a cat in hell's chance. Not a cat in hell's chance. And there is that much difference between the automatic breathing that you are all doing out there now and the breathing you ought to be doing on stage. There is that much difference. How so come? How so come? Because the breathing that you are doing, now let me ask you a question. You're breathing in, you're breathing out. How much air do you think you are breathing in and out? When you're just on unconscious automatic control like that, how much is the tidal volume that's going in and out of your lungs? Anybody want to hazard a guess? Richard, you guessed correctly before. Richard, go for it. 1.25 liters is a good guess, and it's wrong. But it's not a bad one. So 1.25 liters we had. Anybody else? Anthony. Half a liter. You're kind of bracketing the answer here. The answer is about this much. It's about a wine bottle, 750 milliliters. Tidal volume. Now, it's going to be different for different people in the room, and yes, there is a difference between the sexes, but in a rough approximation, 750 milliliters. If I told you that your maximum lung capacity was in fact 3 times that, would you believe me? You'd be wrong to, because it's 6.5 times that. That's a veritable fuel can of fuel that you are potentially not using. What's the impact of that? Well, let's be scientific. Let's put it on a graph. What happens? If you are using your wine bottle unconscious 3-stage automatic breathing process, you're going to get a breath that doesn't last very long. It's just going to be a little short one like this. But if you are really tanked up because you know how to breathe properly, you're going to get a voice that is going to last a long, long, long time. It's just going to last longer. Is there anything exciting that you can do with that? You bet your bottom dollar there is. There's a tremendously exciting stuff that you can do with that. The E above middle C for 22 seconds. Bill Withers, longest sustained note in pop music history. Now, you're not going to do that on a breath that's a bottle of wine, are you? Well, so what, Chris? You know, I mean, get with the plan, Chris. Chris, you don't understand. I'm not a singer. I'm a speaker. You know, I don't need to do all this stuff. Well, maybe. Let me suggest something to you. Let me suggest that if you were on stage, and by the way, I've tested all of this, you're going to get 2 golden goodies off me today. Here's the first golden goodie. The point is this, and we don't get it nowadays because by and large the days of long oratory have gone and we're into soundbite politics. It's a great shame because we no longer hear this. But here's the issue. When you start speaking, the audience expects you to stop. They are unconsciously waiting for a breath point because they know you've got to take one. And that's when they reset their brain. However, if you take a breath and you start a sentence that keeps going, and it just keeps going and going, and there is no pause for breath, and the audience is waiting for you to breathe, but you don't, because you've got so much air that you can just keep going, and by the time you get to the end of that sentence and then you breathe, they will all be listening to you. That is an under-the-radar technique. They cannot help themselves. They stop fiddling with their Blackberries. They stop fiddling with their iPods and all the rest of it. They look up and they listen. And when you get to that point is where you drop the hook in. That is where the hook goes in, the point that you want them to remember. How many basic controls do you think the voice has? Fundamental basic controls. Richard, I'm looking at you because you're the numbers man today. 3 would be a good guess, Richard. 3. Here they are. Pitch, pace, and power. When I say power, I mean volume. Now, if this were a geeky voice conference, I would now be shot for confusing you with, there is a difference between power and voice, okay? But for us, pitch, pace, and power, nice and easy to remember, and that gives us an envelope for our voice. So when we go through the thinking phase, we're thinking about the sound we want to produce, we bring that air in, we set up the controls, and the controls that we are setting up are the controls that will produce the right pitch. Is it going to be high pitch, low pitch? It's going to produce the right pace. Am I going to speak faster? Am I going to speak slow? It's going to produce the right volume. Am I going to speak loud or am I going to speak softly? Pitch, pace, power, the three basic controls. There is a fourth, and here is the fourth. The fourth is this one that's coming out right now. The fourth is color. Color. The chorus I used to sing with was directed by a fabulous musician, a wonderful chorus director. Very straight-talking northerner. A very straight-talking northerner. You get to the end of a rehearsal and you say, not too shabby, lads. Even if we'd sung our hearts out, not too shabby. Bass section, bar 36, give me more chocolate. I want to hear more chocolate in bar 36. And we used to try and educate Steve and say that the word for color, Steve, is timbre. Timbre. He couldn't handle that. Timber, lad. Bass section, bar 36, I want more chocolate timber. What was Steve talking about when he said chocolate timber, bass section, chocolate timber, bar 36? What was he talking about? Now, take a pot. Put it on the gas stove, put some chocolate in it, melt the chocolate, stir the chocolate, get some gravel, throw some gravel into the chocolate for a bit of extra crunch, stir it up. Whose voice is that? I'm thinking Richard Burton. Warm that voice up a bit. Who do we get to? I'm thinking of, if we went for a reddish voice, I'm thinking of maybe Emilia Fox. If we put a flinty edge on that voice, so it's just a bit flintier, where does that take us? I'm thinking of Alistair Cook. You put more twang into Alistair Cook's voice, then where does that take us? John F. Kennedy. Amy Winehouse, certainly. You push twang to its absolutely illogical conclusion, where do you end up? I'm thinking of punk rock, Sid Vicious, Alice Cooper, these kind of people. So let's put all of those voices up there and let's have a look at them. Now, I'm not asking you to impersonate all of these people. I'm not saying that you should be able to impersonate all of these people, but I would encourage you, wouldn't it be fabulous if you had your own versions of all of these? Wouldn't that be good? Wouldn't that put more depth into your performance? You see, it's a bit like this. If you're going to talk about customer service, don't you want to talk about that incredibly frustrating event that the customer had? When all the customer wanted to do was just get a bit of service, and they were about to explode! Everyone lose control, because they were right on the white edge of the spectrum! I mean, don't you want to be able to do that just to demonstrate what it's all about? Shouldn't you just be able to flick that on and off in a switch? While at the same point being able to say, you know, I do have an absolutely wonderful collection of etchings, and I think you ought to come and see them sometime. You know, there's the full range there. There's the full range there. So let's explore all of that. Okay, let's move on because we've got an exciting little exercise that I want to show you now. Now, you have to participate in this one. I'll demonstrate for you. And you're going to have to do it. It's this is another golden goodie. This will put money in your bank account. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. One is the next note on the octave above that. That's B flat, which is probably good enough for most people in the room. It goes across both sexes pretty much, B flat. So I would like you to sing that. I'm going to do it once more, then you're going to sing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you want to put the one on top, be my guest. Okay, so here's the exercise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Right, okay, with conviction, here we go, team. Are we ready?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now this is what I want you to do. The next one I want you to hear is, I just want to hear 135. Nothing else. Straight in. 1, 3, 5. Not as confident. Not as confident. There, bit shaky, bit shaky. So let's just draw a veil over that exercise. Come back here. You've got to have them ready to go, John, haven't you? You've got to have a backup. Okay, here's the backup plan. Overseas guests, you probably won't be able to join in this exercise because it does rely on a knowledge of British culture, so forgive us for the next 45 seconds. All the Brits in the audience who are about my age, no messing around, fill this hall with a beautiful rendition, straight in. I'll sing it with you, the theme tune to Z Cars. Here we go. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. There you go. Do you realize what you've just done? 1, 3, 5, da 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 da. 1, 3, 5, da 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 da. 5, 3, 1, da 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 da. 1, 3, 5, 5, 3, 1. That's it. It's full of 1, 3, 5. Where else have you heard 1, 3, 5 on this stage today? Down the lane I look, and there runs Mary. 1, 3, 5 I look, yes, they've all come to meet me. 1, 3, 5. 1, 3, 5 is built into every popular piece of modern music that we know. Our ears remember it. The theme tune to Z Cars for our overseas guests, Z Cars was a popular TV series 40 years ago. Yeah, it's that old. The last episode was broadcast 34 years ago, and yet you remembered it. And yet you remembered it. So this 1, 3, 5 thing is built in to our brains. What can we do with 1, 3, 5? Could we use that? Could we use that as speakers? Maybe not. But could we use it as vocal performers? Oh yeah, big time. Big time. Let's just take a look at that song, The Green, Green Grass of Home, and we'll get to the handout in a minute. Let's just look at the song, The Green, Green Grass of Home. So The Green, Green Grass of Home starts with... Da, da, da. The song takes off at that point, doesn't it? That's when it gets motoring. Up until then, it's pretty pedestrian. And that 1, 3, 5 interval is not the punchline, it's the setup. What's the punchline? The punchline is, I look and there runs Mary. That's the punchline. The setup is a pretty mundane piece of English. Down the road, I look. Down the road. Down the road, I look and there runs Mary is the punchline. And the rest of them comes before it's a bit mundane. Interesting. Let's take that piece of music and let's put it into an absolutely completely bog standard, made up, for the purpose exercise of a commercial presentation. We all know the old factory has got to close. It no longer serves our purposes. We've built a new factory across the road, which is stuffed full of all the latest milling machines and lathes and automated design and all of this stuff. And we know that this is going to serve us well for the next 15 years. And that's why it's good to work at ABC Engineering. 1, 3, 5 interval. Now imagine if I'd used that 1, 3, 5 interval to introduce a hook on the end of the extended vocalization exercise that I showed you earlier. Would everybody be listening to it? You bet your bottom dollar they would. You bet your bottom dollar they would. Clearly, there is more to this than meets the eye. Clearly, I could talk about this forever, and that's unfortunate because we don't have the amount of time to do that. So we do have a handout. So I've got a handout that will be on your tables magically before you leave this room for lunch. Let's see if that works, but that's the plan. The handout will give you more details of exercises that we have not done on stage today because we just can't do them together, in such a big audience, okay? So the handout will give you a good place to start doing all of this stuff, because you need to get to grips with the breathing first. So what is it that I want you to do? I want you to do 3 things. They all begin with the letter T. The first thing I want you to do that begins with the letter T is thrive. I want you to get to grips with this breathing to thrive. This 5-stage process is radically different from the breathing that you're doing now, if you're sitting in the audience, and it will support you when you do the second thing beginning with T, which is the tricks. That's the extended vocalization and the 1-3-5 interval. And the final thing I want you to do is to experiment with timber, as my dear friend Steve would call it. Get some color into your performance. I think you've been a great audience, and you're all going to go off to lunch soon, so we need to get your arms and legs warmed up to enable you to do that. So there is one final exercise that we're going to do, and we're all going to sing My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. Now, overseas guests, you may not know this traditional theme tune. Don't worry about it. Just join in as you go along. It's a perfectly well-known tune. Slight difference. We need to get the legs and the arm muscles going again. So it's going to go like this. You're all sitting down. First word beginning with B. Stand up, hands in the air. Stay there. Second word beginning with B. Sit down. Third word beginning with B. Stand up, hands in the air. Fourth word beginning with B. You get the process. Okay. Now, I don't often do this to audiences, but as John was clever enough to show you and kind enough to show you the secrets behind some of his magic, I will give you the answer to this exercise. If you do this right, you should all be sitting down at the end. We'll see if that works or not. Okay, team, are we ready? Are we serious? Are we ready to go? My Bonnie lies over the ocean. My Bonnie lies over the sea. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. Think, oh, bring back my Bonnie to me. Bring back, oh, bring back my Bonnie to me, Bring back, oh, bring back my Bonnie to me. Oh, you just made it. Time for lunch. I'm out of here. Thank you. Goodbye.